a wandering person.
Thus, when he was in the land of Bharatashva,
which is India,
traveling to all the places of pilgrimage, he visited Prabhashkatra. At that time, Maharaj Yudhishthira was the emperor and held the world under one military strength and one flag.
Go, men, women, everyone, please be ready.
At the place of pilgrimage at Pravas, it came to his knowledge that all his relatives had died due to violent passion, just as an entire forest burns due to the fire produced by the friction of bamboos. After this, he proceeded west, where the river Sarasvati flows.
On the bank of the river Sarasvati, there were 11 places of pilgrimage, namely Tirtha, Usana, Manu, Prithu, Angi, Asta, Vayu, Sadas, Go, Guha, and Sradhadeva. Vidura visited all of them and duly performed rituals.
There were also many other temples of various forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu established by great sages and demigods. These temples were marked with the chief emblems of the Lord, and they reminded one always of the original personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna.
Therefore, thereafter, he passed through very wealthy provinces like Surat, Savira, and Matsya, and through western India, known as Kuru Jangala. At last, he reached the bank of the Yamuna, where he happened to meet Uddhava, the great devotee of Lord Krishna.
Then, due to his great love and feeling, Vidura embraced him, Uddhava, who was a constant companion of Lord Krishna and formerly a great student of Brihaspati's. Vidura then asked him for news of the family of Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead.
Let's go ahead and give a little background about Vidura, and then we'll do this verse number 25. Okay. Right, so in the World War I, Germany was defeated by the Allies and subjected to a very humiliating set of reparations, punishments. And so, as a result, the German people gradually began to reassert themselves, collect their military power, and ultimately wanted to undo the humiliation of having lost. So they were still not that very strong, but they decided to annex this one part of Czechoslovakia, which was mostly German-speaking, right next to them. They just kind of annexed it. So we're making this part of our country now, just to see what the other countries would do. And so the English were very strong at that time, and French, the other countries, and could have easily subdued Germany, although it would have been a fight. So the Prime Minister of England, his name Neville Chamberlain, went to meet with Hitler, the head of the Germans. And so then he came back to England with a letter saying Hitler has agreed he won't take any more land. He's just taking this one little bit of Czechoslovakia, but he won't do any more. So we'll have peace in our time. This is in the late 30s. So he was famous for that saying, peace in our time. And Hitler, of course, after making this promise, shortly after that, he invaded Poland. So then England had to get into the war. And the Prime Minister, Chamberlain, was derided for appeasing Hitler, not standing up to him. And so the next time they elected a new Prime Minister, Churchill. And Churchill was presiding when the British then sent an army out to defend Europe from the Germans. So this was called the British Expeditionary Force. But they were not very skilled, and the Germans were much stronger, and they cornered them in a place called Dunkirk, where they were about to slaughter the entire army, and the war would have been over. Somehow the Germans hesitated. The English managed to send bunches of civilian boats and get them back to England, so their whole army didn't get wiped out. So it was like one failure after the next. First appeasement, and then Dunkirk. Britain was not looking too good. Churchill at that time famously said, "Success is the ability to go from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm." So this is Vidura's situation. Vidura, the name Vidura, all these names from the Bhagavatam are beautiful. Anyone know what Vidura means? What is vid? Knowledge. And Pura means like compassion, strong, and heart. So Vidura had this wise and compassionate heart. This is what his name means, Vidura. So Vidura's history begins long, long ago with a great king named Shantanu. And Shantanu was from Coral Gables. Just checking. Okay. Shantanu desired this beautiful maiden who he met on the riverbank. And she said, "I'll be your wife provided that you never question anything I do." So he agreed. And after some time, she bore a son. And she took the beautiful boy and went down to the Ganga and threw him in the river, drowning. Shantanu was shocked, but he remembered his promise. "I can't question anything she does." Remember this, ladies, if you ever get married. Sure, lay out your conditions. And then it happened again and again and again and again. And finally, on the seventh one, he said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "All right, you've questioned what I do. Now I'm leaving, but you've been a good husband, so I will bring this boy back to you in the future." So then she and the baby left. And some years later, long story short, she brought the boy back to Shantanu, who raised him as his beloved son. His name was Devarata. So Shantanu, who apparently had this kind of wandering eye, he was out hunting, and he saw another beautiful maiden to whom he was attracted. She was the daughter of a fisherman, very low class, and yet he was attracted. So he went to her father and said, "I would like to marry your daughter." And this fisherman, he was the king of the fishermen in that village. He was very shrewd. He said, no, I can't let you marry my daughter. You already have a son, Devarata, who will become the heir to the kingdom. My daughter could only marry you if her son could become the heir. And so Shantanu went back disappointed. And Devarata, who loved his father dearly, could see that his father was upset about something. So he asked him, and he said, nothing. But Devarata was a little determined, so he checked with his servants and went out and retraced his father's steps. And he found the village with the fishermen and learned about the request. And he went to the fishermen and said, "My father, the king, wants to marry your daughter. What's your problem? He's the king." And the father said, "No, only if her children would become the next king. Her son would become the next king." And Devarata said, "Well, okay, I'll renounce the throne. I promise you that her son will become the next king." And the shrewd fisherman said, "Yes, but what if you marry and then you have a son? Then they'll be fighting who gets the throne. I don't want my grandson to go through that." So then Devarata said, "All right, well then I will never marry." So for a Kshatriya, this is a big deal because Kshatriyas are very passionate, and passionate people want to be married like not only once but 55 times. And but Devarata took this vow, and then the heavens opened and the demigod showered flowers and said, they shouted Bhishma, 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 which means terrible vow, a great vow. So this is how Bhishma became who was the son of the king, became like the caretaker of the throne, but not the king himself. So Bhishma had this role, never married, always protected his father's throne. And Shantanu married this fisherman's daughter, whose name was Satyavati. So Shantanu and Satyavati had 3 sons, or excuse me, they had 2 sons, but they both died. So there was no heir to the throne. And Shantanu, by that time, the second one had died, had left the kingdom. So Satyavati was there wondering now who's going to be the next king. And at that time, the sons of Shantanu had married, had 3 wives, but no children. And so these wives were actually 2 of them remained, 1 of them left. So these 2 wives were called and told, look, your husband's dead, you have no sons, we need to arrange for you to have a surrogate husband so that you can have sons to continue the throne. And Satyavati at that time revealed, I have a secret son who I never told anyone about. Yeah. So this son was named Vyasadeva. And he had been born under mystical circumstances in a way that Satyavati retained her virginity. But she had this secret son. And he had told her he was born. See, what happened was she was the fisherman's daughter. She would ferry people back and forth across the river as a service. So once this great sage, Parasara Muni, came and said, and as they were being ferried, he became attracted by her beauty. And she said, no, I'm a maiden. I can't touch you. And he said, don't worry, I will impregnate you in such a way that you will retain your virginity. So in their union, from that mystical union, this sage was immediately born. That's the quality of the great sages and demigods in the Vedas, that they don't have to go through the great traumas of pregnancy and childbirth. The child can almost immediately appear. So that's what happened. This son of Parasa was Vyasadeva. He's also known as Dvaipayana, yes, one who's born, an island born, something like that. Yeah. In any case, Vyas appeared full grown and said to his mother, if you ever need me, just think of me and I'll be there. And then he went off to do his austerity. So at that moment, Satyavati remembered, okay, Vyasadeva, I need you. He came, and he'd been in the mountains doing austerity, so he looked like a hippie. Long hair, beard, very rough clothing. And so, yes, mother, what could I do for you? She explained the situation. So these 2 widows need to have offspring so that we can continue the lineage. And yes, mother. And so the first queen, Amba, came in and met her sire, and he was so horrific looking to her that she kept her eyes shut while conceiving the child. She couldn't look at him. And so as a result of her keeping her eyes shut, that son was born blind. He was the eldest son, but he couldn't become the king because of his disability. So his name was Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra means one who is Dhrita, determined to rule. But he couldn't rule because of his blindness. So the second queen, having heard what happened to the first queen, said, okay, I'll keep my eyes open. She kept her eyes open, but she was frightened by the sight of this hairy sage. So her son was born healthy, but pale. She was pale at conception. So his name was Pandu. Pandu means pale, whitish. So that was the second son. And then Satyavati thinking, okay, we better have a spare just in case, because we lost the first 2. So she told the first wife, the one who couldn't look, okay, you have another child with this sage. So she agreed, but she didn't really want to do it. So at the last minute, she told her maid, you go in my place. And so the maid was very humble and very pure and very respectful to Vyasadeva. And so she conceived a child with him who was very pure-hearted and very humble, and yet not qualified to take the throne because he wasn't actually the son of the queen, he was the son of a maidservant. So his name was Vidura. So this is the background of Vidura. He was the youngest of three brothers. The oldest one, Dhritarashtra, couldn't rule. So the middle son, Pandu, became the king. And Vidura also could not rule because of his background. So Pandu was the only one of the three who could actually rule the kingdom, but he died untimely. He had 5 sons, but after these 5 sons were born, he died. And they were too young to assume the throne. So Dhritarashtra, meanwhile, he had 100 sons. And they were born under mystical circumstances. The eldest son, when he was born, he brayed like a donkey. So all the sages said, this is very inauspicious, very inauspicious. You should just disown this son, just send him away. But Dhritarashtra was too attached. And so he kept that son, and the rest, that son was named Duryodhana. Dur means bad. It can also mean like fierce, and Yodhana means like fighter. So he was like a bad dude, although a good fighter. Duryodhana. And so Duryodhana was the eldest son of Dhritarashtra. Yudhisthira, whose name we read in this section that Brandon read, Yudhisthira. He was the eldest son of Pandu. So the eldest sons would always get the priority. They would become the next heirs to the throne. So Yudhisthira was the rightful heir to the throne. But Duryodhana was very envious of him and his brothers. So he conspired to kill him in various ways unsuccessfully. So all of this was going on in the palace. Bhishma was the caretaker. Duryodhana, as we read on Friday, chastised his uncle, Vidura, because Vidura, being pure-hearted and wise, was always giving good advice. Look, Duryodhana, you shouldn't hassle your cousins. They're very good to you. Just take your place and be humble. But Duryodhana couldn't say, no, I got to get rid of him somehow or other. He was conspiring, built him a palace and said to his 5 cousins, oh, come to the palace for the summer. It'll be a beautiful vacation. But this palace was made out of highly flammable material, like shellac. And it's all built into the walls, and the wood was soaked in it. So the slightest fire would bring the whole thing down. And Pandavas heard about this. It was Vidura who tipped them off. Vidura said to the Pandavas, watch out. This place is going to go up in flames. So they made a secret escape hatch and got away. Duryodhana and his family thought they'd all died in the fire. So Duryodhana pretended to be oh, what a tragedy. Pandavas, meanwhile, were just young and vulnerable. They and their mother Kunti were hiding out. And so when they were a little older and stronger, they came back and appeared quite unexpectedly before Duryodhana at Draupadi's Swayamvara ceremony. And they won the competition and won Draupadi. Duryodhana really wanted to marry Draupadi, but Arjuna was a better archer and he won. So Duryodhana was angrier than ever. Somehow they had survived his intrigue. Somehow they got Draupadi. Now he was really determined to get rid of him. And so he cooked up more schemes. And all the time Vidura was saying, look, why don't you just be reasonable, be nice. This is not auspicious to try to murder your cousins. But Duryodhana wouldn't hear it. So this is when Vidura said, okay. Duryodhana got to the point, as we read on Friday, where he was instructing his assistants, he should beat him to within an inch of his life. This beloved elder, wise uncle Vidura, just beat him to an inch of his life. And Vidura was not attached. Although he lived in the palace and luxury his whole life, he was ready to say, all right, that's what you want. So he left his bow at the front door. He failed to convince them. This is my point. He failed to stop the intrigue. And so What did he do? He just went on to the next opportunity. He was not distraught about his failure. He continued to pursue the spiritual life. Okay, this isn't working. Let me go and try something else. So he went out on pilgrimage, which is, it's not like buying a deluxe bus pass or something, or booking first class tickets to travel here and there. He had to walk everywhere, and wherever he went, he didn't know where he would be staying. He'd sleep here, sleep there, as a mendicant. The meaning of a mendicant, just like a homeless person in our society, except in that society, if people were doing that for spiritual reasons, it was very respectable. They were going out and living in austere ways because of their spiritual quests. So Vidura was basically depending on the goodwill of others when he went to all these different places of pilgrimage that we just read about. Just went out traveling, no money, he didn't have a credit card, he didn't have a car, walking from place to place, depending upon the goodwill of other people. So imagine going from the luxury of the palace to a life like that. But because his attempts failed to reconcile the family, he just, all right, I'll go. So this is a great lesson in our spiritual lives. Remember, success is going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. All right, so let's read the verse 25. Savasudevanucharam prashantam Vrihaspate praktanayam pratitam Alingya gadham pranayena bhadram Svanama Prishad Bhagavat Prajanam Savasudevanucharam prashantam Vrihaspate praktanayam pratitam Alingya gadham pranayena bhadram Swanama Prishad Bhagavat Prajanam Savasudevanucharam prashantam Alingya gadham pranayena bhadram Svanama Prishad Bhagavat Prajanam. Anyone else? Savasudevanucharam prashantam Vrihaspate praktanayam pratitam Alingya gadam pranayena bhadram Svanama Prishad Bhagavat Prajanam. So let's see, synonyms together, please. Sa, he, Vidura, Vasudeva, Lord Krishna, Anucharam, constant companion, Prashantam, very sober and gentle. Brihaspate, of Brihaspati, the learned spiritual master of the demigods. Prak, formerly. Tanayam, son or disciple. Pratitam, acknowledged. Alingya, embracing. Gadham, very feelingly. Pranadina, in love. Bhadram, auspicious. Swanam, his own. Aprajat, asked. Bhagavat, of the personality of Godhead. Prajanam, family, in translation together. Then, due to his great love and feeling, Vidura embraced him, Uddhava, who was a constant companion of Lord Krishna and formerly a great student of Brihaspati's. Vidura then asked him for news of the family of Lord Krishna, personality of Godhead. Purport. Vidura was older than Uddhava like a father, and therefore when the two met, Uddhava bowed before Vidura, and Vidura embraced him, because Uddhava was younger, like a son. Vidura's brother Pandu was Lord Krishna's uncle, and Uddhava was a cousin to Lord Krishna. According to social custom, therefore, Vidura was to be respected by Uddhava on the level of his father. Uddhava was a great scholar in logic. He was known to be a son or disciple of Brihaspati, a greatly learned priest and spiritual master of the demigods. Vidura asked Uddhava about the welfare of his relatives, although he knew already that they were no longer in the world. This inquiry appears to be very queer, but Srila Jiva Goswami states that the news was shocking to Vidura, who therefore inquired again due to great curiosity. Thus his inquiry was psychological and not practical. So this is the first question of Vidura in this chapter. What happened to Krishna's family? He knows they're already dead, but he's wanting to hear it again. So this is the quality of intelligent people. They can ask appropriate questions. It isn't a sign of wisdom to be able to expound as much as to be able to ask appropriately. So here's the situation. Vidura is elder. He's uncle of Uddhava, and yet he's inquiring from Uddhava. So Uddhava is a cousin of Krishna's also, very close with Krishna. It's so close that he looks just like Krishna. And he lives in Dwarka, Lord Krishna's palatial home. So Uddhava happens to be out. Vidura happens to meet him. And this is the foundation for the next two cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. Their conversation, which we'll be reading about, which leads to another conversation that then goes on all the way to the fifth canto. So it's important to understand these personalities a bit. Uddhava has a fairly short role in this exchange, but Vidura will be involved for the rest of this section of the Bhagavatam. So, any questions thus far on any of this? What was the reason why Uddhava was out there? So Lord Krishna's family had, let me give a little bit of background. So there's this great battle of Kurukshetra, in which the sons of Dhritarashtra fought the sons of Pandu. So ultimately they could not reconcile due to Duryodhana being such a jerk. And so they had this huge battle. And of course the Bhagavad Gita is all about this taking place in this battle, this conversation of the Bhagavad Gita. But after that battle, the sons of Pandu won, but there was great devastation. Millions of men were killed, and all these armies throughout the earth had more or less been decimated because they all took sides in the battle. So what was Krishna's purpose in coming to earth originally? Annihilate the miscreants. Why specifically at the beginning of the Krishna book? Perhaps some of you read the Krishna book or the 10th canto. Why did Krishna come to earth? I mean, that's a general reason, but why specifically? Okay? Well, yeah, again, a general reason, but specifically what happened? Yes, to establish dharma. Yeah, again, you're giving all the good general reasons, but there was a specific incident. Yeah. The earth was overwhelmed. There's so many big armies, and I'm just getting crushed here. And so she went to Brahma, and Brahma went to Vishnu, and Vishnu said, "Don't worry, Krishna will be coming." So he had this whole battle of Kurukshetra stage where all the armies wiped each other's out, except the family of Krishna. So Krishna's family, the Yadus, still had a powerful army, and no one on earth could oppose them. But this was still a burden for the earth. And so Krishna arranged, through a beautiful pastime in the 11th canto, that his own family members turned on each other and had this big fight and wiped each other out. So Uddhava was one of the few survivors of this Holocaust in the Yadu dynasty. So after that, he didn't go back to Dwarka, he just went on. Also, I think Krishna had instructed him, in fact, to go to a holy place. So after his family was wiped out, then Krishna went to the bank of the, I think it was a river or I forget, anyway, the beach. Anyway, he was lying there relaxing, and his lotus foot was showing, and it appeared to be a deer. And so this hunter named Jara, so oh, there's a deer, and he shot an arrow at Krishna's foot. And it was not a fatal wound by any means. It was all happening by Krishna's arrangement. And Krishna said, "All right, I will leave this body for the atheists and return now. I've finished my business. I've gotten rid of all these armies." So before he left, Uddhava came and inquired from him. And so Uddhava had this long conversation with Krishna about a great variety of spiritual topics. Does anyone know what that conversation is called? Right, Uddhava Gita, right. This is in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. I think Mickey Singer is very fond of this Uddhava Gita, one of our local spiritual friends. So the Uddhava Gita is very similar to Bhagavad Gita in many ways, not quite as introductory in nature, and yet very poetic in its analogies. So in this section, Uddhava, at this time, Uddhava gets this opportunity to hear directly from Krishna. And therefore, it's very appropriate for Vidura to inquire from him. You see? So, although he's younger, he just had this darshan with Krishna. So Vidura has a lot he wants to hear from him. Okay?
In relation to Shantanu, I was just wondering where Krishna falls in this family tree. He's the cousin, but as I understand, he's not cousin in the way I.
Yes. Yeah, it's fairly complicated. I'm not able to give a brief summary of all the personalities. I think it's there in the 11th canto. There's a family tree. But, so Kunti and Vasudev, the brother and sister, I believe that's it. And so Arjuna, the sons of Kunti were Krishna's cousins. And Vasudeva was Krishna's father. And where Vasudeva and Kunti come in relation to Shantanu, I'm not sure. Somewhere in there. It's like Tennessee. Everybody's related. Kunti? Yeah. She married Pan. Oh, there you go. Thank you. Yes. But yes, this is like forensic analysis by Prema. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? So what do you think about this idea of success meaning going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm?
At Bhakti Tirtha Swami's Vyasa Puja at a home program was this year.
one of his disciples had talked about at a Rath Yatra. She was trying to play the instruments with, you know, how the procession's kind of organized, and she wanted to play in the band, and one of the guys booted her out, was like, you know, why did you go over there? Something like that, like really mean, and discluded her. And she was so upset, and you know, but Maharaj appeared. He was there at the procession. He just appeared out of nowhere, like to her, like jumped, like, and he had his chutter, and he goes, "Never curb your enthusiasm," and then he just disappeared. You know, that's how she described it, and she said that was an instruction to her, and she just had the second wave of energy to continue it. And she said, you know, that was an instruction to me directly from him, but that was an instruction to everybody about it. And sometimes when I'm feeling discouraged, I try to imagine that just Bhakti Tirtha Swami telling you, like, you know, don't give it away, you know, over somebody
Yes.
being a jerk.
Yes. It's very easy to be drained by the actions of other people. And when we are disappointed in the actions of others, we have two choices. We can be a victim, or we can be self-contained. We can recognize that really people will only be able to drain our enthusiasm if we allow them to. And so our tendency is to want to blame others. It's a childish tendency built into all of us. Blame others. And Srila Prabhupada gave us very important instruction on this. Once there was a new devotee, his name was Peter Burwash, a wonderful gentleman. He passed away a few years ago, very tragically. But Peter was a great athlete, and he was particularly good at tennis, so he became a tennis professional. It was very competitive tennis, but he was managing to do well, and he won a tournament or done well in a tournament, so he had some money. And he was also getting interested in Krishna consciousness at the same time. So he knew he couldn't like move in the ashram and be a brahmachari, so he decided to become a life member. So he gave, at that time it was $1,000. He gave $1,000 donation to the temple president in Honolulu, which was a lot of money in the 70s. And so the temple president promptly absconded with the money and left. And so Peter was quite devastated by this. So he asked Srila Prabhupada. He told him what happened. He was so upset. Prabhupada said something to him that he said, that became a cornerstone of my life. Peter went on to establish a highly successful tennis coaching, international tennis coaching company, and gave 300 motivational lectures a year all over the world. But he said, but Prabhupada told him was, do not blame the agent of your karma. Do not blame the agent of your karma. So if we're feeling bummed out by something somebody else does, what are we doing? We're blaming the agent of our karma. What is the alternative? To say, okay, I'm just getting a little fraction of what I was due to my past sinful life by Krishna's grace. I'm just getting a little fraction, and it happens to be delivered to me by this person. When people bug us, we could just understand like they are Amazon delivery people for Yamaraj or Shani. You know, they're just here's your karma that you ordered. Overnight delivery was requested. So why do we blame them? We don't blame the messenger. This is the point. It's hard to see because we want to control, and yet we don't control. And when we allow others' actions to disturb us, then we empower them and disempower ourselves. But we want to be empowered, then we say, okay, I'm accepting responsibility for my suffering, and I'm not going to blame others. So that's how we can keep enthusiastic. We can remain enthusiastic. It's impossible to be enthusiastic if we are victims of circumstance. And we want mommy to come and fix it.
For everybody complex. I was thinking that even if somebody feels that such and such person did this and like, say even abused, they can with the office I'm working with now, the leadership misconduct office, they can bring it up, but some of them do it in a way that this should be dealt with, but not in a way like I'm such a big victim and this person did beat it. But yeah, third ability they were able to bring up stuff, but in a way where they're detached from the result. Whatever happens to it, just do that as a sense of duty. The Prabhupada's mission, it should be looked at.
It should be looked at. I'm not.
But it's
Yeah.
As you said, was my somehow I have to go through it.
Yeah.
So, but even in hard cases, I mean it's really hard to do, but the devotees who are advanced in Krishna consciousness are able to do that.
As opposed to saying, oh, you got to do this or this or this, or
Yeah.
I'm going to be dissatisfied.
Some say that, but there are some who are highly elevated.
That's the problem with ISKCON is we're still human beings. Like Prabhupada said that if somebody is dirty, if they're in the shower, you can't criticize them too heavily. So they may be dirty, but they're in the shower. So that's the position of devotees, where we still have our conditioning, but at least we're chanting our Krishna. We are working on purifying ourselves. All right, any other questions, comments? So, let's stop there. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.